What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, also certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. I am jacked because we got another epic conversation here. And remember, I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe Show is a place of epic conversations. And right off, if anyone has any comments, questions, etc., put them in the chat room, and our hip-hop heads will answer them directly. So let me give you some background. A few weeks ago, I was hanging online with Alexander Williams, the man in the shirt with a collar. We were having a conversation about, I know, he's a sharp guy, the young guy, he's the young buck, he's sharp dressed man, and we're having a conversation about white supremacy, and as the conversation was going on, I go, interesting, the front face of white supremacy is white men, and the front face of hip-hop is black men, and since especially 2017 has been an interesting year for black men versus white men in a lot of areas, I thought, let's have an epic conversation about hip-hop versus white supremacy. So that's the background. I've got both of them here. They're both from the left coast, so they're not too far away distance-wise from each other. So first things first, I'd like to welcome LeRon, Barton. How you doing, my man?
Good, man. Thank you for having me again, man. This is starting to become a regular occurrence.
Is that a problem?
No, not
good.
Not at all.
I just want to make sure.
I'm always humbled to be on the show, Dr. Bob. I'm excited to work with Alexander on this discussion. I mean, hip hop is integral to my life. I mean, I don't know what, where, or who I would be if I did not have hip hop in my life. It's just such a big part of it. So I'm 100% jazzed to talk about it, and I'm also really jazzed to talk about it in the relationship with racism, white supremacy. So, Dr. Bob, you know that I'm always down to talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't.
Well, you know what? Whenever I hear white supremacy, the first person I think about is you, because you've mentioned it on my conversations more than anybody else I know. And the regulars on this show, when you're not on, and they talk about white supremacy, they're always referring back to you. So you got it implanted. You are the white supremacy curator for the Dr. Vibe Show.
I'm just striving to just tell the truth, and just like what the great Malcolm X said, just make it plain.
Right. Just be a little bit careful when you're leaning your head, because if you can go just a little bit the other way, other way a bit more. Yeah, there we go. Now you're good. Now you're good. You're good. All right.
Now I'm gas.
All right. So, can you give a little background about yourself to our audience?
Yes, sir. Again, my name is LeRon Barton. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I live in San Francisco, California. I'm a writer, journalist, author. I've written 2 books. First book is Straight Dope, a 360-degree look into American drug culture. And my second book, All We Really Need Is Love, stories of dating, relationships, heartbreak, and marriage. I write essays about race, mass incarceration, politics, gender, as well as dating. My work has appeared in Salon.com, The Good Men Project, BuzzFeed, SF Bayview, Elephant Journal, Those People, Ravishly. I know that I'm forgetting a lot of publications.
It's all right.
And I've also appeared on Al Jazeera, the stream, to talk about colorism. So that's just pretty much me in a nutshell.
So as you can tell, white supremacy is something he likes to chat about. So next guest, we have Alexander Williams, a gentleman who's been on the Dr. Vibe Show many times, and definitely the youngest regular of the Dr. Vibe Show. And so give a little background about yourself, man. Give us some background about yourself.
Well, to ditto on what LeRon said, I am a writer myself, an essayist, a author. I have work that's on the Huffington Post. I have a blog there. I write stories and training materials, both academic, professional, and technical. I am working on my dissertation right now, so that way when I get into grad school, all I got to do is edit it, because I don't want to be writing that while I'm doing it. And part of why because this just happens to be what my dissertation is about. So I consider myself well-versed on the subject as also a musician. So I'm very pleased to not only offer a personal and black or mixed race look at this, but also from an academic standpoint, because I believe that the academic component of rap is the most criminally underrated part of it that people fail to recognize. So I'm really excited to be able to give that type of perspective.
Wonderful. This is going to be epic tonight. Good stuff. I'd like to just shout out right on the front end, Dr. Tachi is already in the room. So Dr. Tachi, if you have any questions, comments, please, you know that I will share them with our black male thought leaders to give their insight on. So I'll first ask LeRon, it was interesting, before we came on live, you mentioned how integral hip-hop is to your life, or has been to your life, and still is to your life. Can you expound on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that growing up in the ghetto in like the early to late 80s, hip hop kind of reflected the environment that I was in. It allowed to give me a voice to what was going on. I mean, I remember listening to EPMD, listening to Salt and Pepper, listening to Dana Dane, of course, Eric B. and Rakim, and that allowed me to gain a very close relationship with my brother, with my aunt, as well as to encourage me. I shouldn't say encourage, but it allowed me. It planted the seeds, which would then bloom in me becoming a writer. There's not honestly, there's probably not a day that doesn't go by that I don't listen to some form of hip hop. Not only listening to it, but just how I talk, how I dress, how I view the world. I mean, hip hop framed the world for me as a young black man. I mean, listening to people like Ice Cube and Chuck D, as well as The Message, what I consider to be the greatest hip hop song ever written. It kind of helped me see who I am as a black man, as well as how the world views me as a black man.
Okay. Good stuff. Alexander, what impact has hip-hop had on your existence?
Well, I mean, just to add on to LeRon, hip-hop has given me so much personal freedom. Personal freedom to really explore what it means to me to have an individual identity, to have an identity within black culture itself, and then to have that black culture be a part of mainstream white media and mainstream white culture in the United States. For me, hip-hop was a way for me to connect to the other black people, not only in my community, but in my specific family. One of the more established emotional connections that I had with my father was through R&B and rap that he showed me. So he would put on a vinyl and he'd be like, hey, you need to listen to this guy. It'd be NWA or it'd be R. Kelly. And it wasn't so much more the lyrical content or anything that was happening, but how the music gave us a channel for, even though we were two very different people and I was a kid growing up, for us still to recognize this connection that we could foster. And I think that really opened my eyes when I was able to cultivate that in the other relationships in my life.
Nice. So, LeRon, let me ask, and I'm going to ask both of you this question. I'll ask LeRon to answer first. When hip-hop is at its best, what does it represent?
So, in my opinion, I think hip-hop represents the story of the young black man in America. When I think of hip-hop at its absolute best, immediately I think of Ice Cube's Death Certificate. I think that album talks about all the facets of being a black man, surviving America through racism, white supremacy, through gang violence, through peer pressure, unplanned pregnancies. I mean, hip hop at its best invokes change. It inspires people for change. Hip hop at its best also gives people who are not black or people who are not from the slums a window into seeing what the conditions is. You know, Chuck D once said that hip hop is the ghetto CNN or something to that effect, and it's 100% true. You know, like when I think of the great hip hop, and again, like it's such a integral part of my life because, like, you know, similar to what Alexander said, it allowed me a voice and it gave me a connection with other black folks, you know, whether it be people in Alabama, people in Seattle. You know, it was just sort of like that link. And hip hop inspires people to, I mean, like the best hip hop, I should say. It inspires black folks to realize our brilliance. I mean, this is something that we created. I mean, I think about like Fight the Power. You know, again, like I think about the message. I mean, like the first rhyme I ever learned was Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full, and that rhyme is the most important probably song that I've ever heard in my life, because it talks about what it's like to grow up and want and see that you don't have what you want around you, so you're gonna be willing to do whatever you need to get it. But what most people miss about the song is that Rakim, he leaves being a savage and he gets knowledge of self. And so hip hop introduced me to people like Marcus Garvey. You know, it introduced me to Malcolm X, which, you know, would then become the most influential figure, like non-familiar figure in my entire life. I mean, hip hop at its absolute best gave black people pride in being black. And it just, you know, it was just such an amazing force. You know, I'm sorry to say that I'm talking about it in past tense, but, you know, I mean, dude, sorry, like, but, you know, at one point it was just this magical thing.
Okay. All right. Alexander, what is your take? When hip hop is at its best, what does it look like?
I mean, you know, to piggyback on a lot of LeRon's comments, it stimulates unity and inspiration, and not only that, but it does it in a way that it forces different cultures, and, you know, namely mainstream white media, to recognize African American brilliance in terms of the musical and the poetic art form. I mean, a lot of times people forget that the whole musical and literary tradition of rap is based upon poems. And if it's based upon poems, that means it comes from a literary tradition. Now, I mean, we can argue and sit around all we want about what we think Tupac was rapping about in Tupacalypse Now, but the fact is that we couldn't have had that without Aristotle. It's almost as if this is a current lineage that is being manifested before our eyes, and this is how we consume. You know, so it's like, if you think about how people in ancient Greece or Africa would have consumed the orators of their time, it would have been very similar to how we do it now in terms of the actual cultural commodities that are available to us. Now, I thought it was really interesting, LeRon, that you put a lot of past tense in hip hop. And I don't know if that's because of going on what we were talking about earlier before we went live, a little bit because of, you know, people talking about popping Xannies, things like that. But I remember, I think it's Keegan-Michael Key, or it was Jordan Peele. They had a quote: for every one Morgan Freeman, you have five Flavor Flavs. And I think the same is true in rap. For every, you know, 5 Post Malones, you have a Childish Gambino. And you need a Childish Gambino to be the anchor and to be the connection between the intellectual side of rap and its popularity. And I think that a lot of times that can go either criminally underrated or misrepresented or just not accepted at all. I mean, look how far it took him to, Childish Gambino, I'm speaking of, look how long it took him to be popularized or in mainstream rap. I've been following that guy since at least 2010. But just now he's like, oh yeah, I know him. You know, you get guys singing along to 3005 that never heard about him with like Pondexter or Sick Boy. And a big part of that is that once you kind of establish a body of work that fits alongside this literary canon, then to me, the right people will seek you out.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. So the reason why that I referenced the past is because, I mean, I've been listening to hip hop since '87. So I've seen the genre grow and change. And just keeping it all the way live, man. Like, I mean, there's a lot of garbage hip hop. I mean, it's a lot of trash, and it breaks my heart because what it could have been, and just the fact. I mean, but you know, Alexander, like you know this, man. I mean, like whatever art meets commerce, right? It just totally changed it. And I think that something like the De La Soul once said, you know, back in the day, everyone wasn't a rapper because they couldn't be a rapper, because to be an MC, it required skill. And so now, you know, when I listen, like, I don't listen to the radio, I don't know what's going on. But like, I think the song Jesus. I think the song Bodak Yellow's cool. Like, I mean, it's, you know, it's what it is. It's a young lady by the name of Cardi B.
Cardi B.
Look her up, I mean, you know.
See, you know what I'm saying? That's why you're the young one here.
That's what's up. Nah, man. But I mean, like, I just think that, you know, you brought up Post Malone, and I just like, I guess the guy Mark Anthony Neal, he was talking to a group of people alongside Ninth Wonder and Combat Jack about the same issue. And Mr. Neal said, you know, yeah, you know, we had our Vanilla Ices, you know, but I think the difference between then and now is that we weren't defined by whackness. Like, we have, I mean, like, Little Uzi Vert and Migos, they're like running the rap conversation. So if you go back, see, this is 2017, you go back 97, you know, B.I.G.'s you know, second LP dropped. I mean, we had some great stuff, and you fast forward, I mean, like, Kendrick can't save us all, dog. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, yeah, like, you know, Childish Gambino's dope. You know, Kendrick, you know, he's probably the best MC today, but there's just such an imbalance of just bad stuff. I mean, it's bad, man.
And I completely agree with you. And I mean, debating about who's the best MC in the game right now is a completely different argument.
Right.
But I mean, more than willing to have that any day. But I think what was really interesting point that you bring up, and I think that's really what needs to be talked about when we're talking about hip hop versus white supremacy, is because in the United States, so much of the media and so much of the culture that we consume right now is dictated upon commercialization and marketing. And so that's why we need people like, you know, still like underground artists, like Immortal Technique, for instance. Right. Like, that's why these people still serve as these anchors, because they still defy that type of commercialization. You know, and that's why I have so much respect for people, for just, you know, naming rappers, who take so long to just like sign a deal because they refuse to not sign with somebody that sees their artistic value, you know? And I think that's really where a lot of the crux of this problem lies, is we start to see white supremacy break the armor of hip hop when commercialization is putting the weight behind it.
Can I just interrupt for a second, guys? Because you're flowing so good. Dr. Tachi is saying, Bodak Yellow makes no sense to me. # rubbish. Then she says exactly, Kendrick seems to be carrying the weight.
You know, man, like Cardi B, she's all about making those money moves. So I mean, like, sorry, I mean, like, it's an interesting song. You know, it's catchy, but yeah,
I've never heard it. I hear about this Cardi B, and I just go, yeah, whatever. Next.
Right.
But but
deuces. Yeah.
So let me ask both you. When I brought this topic to your attention that I wanted to have both you on, what was your first reaction?
Well, I mean, might as well let LeRon go because he's been setting the precedent, and then I kind of just pick up where he goes.
Nah, you know what? I just I was really excited because I mean, protest music, just black music, has always been really important in fighting racism. You know, I was I've been listening all day to this song called "Freedom Highway." It's a cover of a Staple Singers song. Yep. by Rhiannon Giddens, and it is an incredible record, right? It's one of the best songs I've heard in the past couple years, and it just kind of just goes to show you that, like, music was such a powerful medium in fighting racism. And when I think about hip hop, and the subject, I'm like, I think about, man, like like we could have done so much more, but art and commerce, man.
Okay. Alexander?
I mean, to me, it's just kind of like we have to think about what happens when white supremacy deems that black people are having too much fun. And what I mean by that is when Biggie and Tupac were at the height of their power, not just in the hip-hop world, but culturally. They were taking over what teenage white mainstream kids thought and how they dressed and how they felt. And that was deemed too much of a significant power, similar to how Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King transcended race with their beliefs. Once they started actually creeping into the white stream media culture, then the white supremacy had to retaliate, because once they reach a certain level of power, then they were deemed like, okay, this guy's dangerous, not just because he's inspiring the black community, but is inspiring a connection between the black community and the mainstream white culture that can dismantle white supremacy. Right. And so, I mean, not to name names, but probably the government. Once the government makes that distinction, like, that's it, and we see that all. That's why we don't have. So that's why we haven't had another Martin Luther King. That's why we haven't had another Biggie, because either they never get discovered, or they get killed before they can actually have that type of impact. Because if you think about it, like, there's one thing of history that never really gets repeated, and that's people's mistakes. Like, empires never really make the same mistakes over and over and over again. It's just like a snowball effect. That's kind of like what ruins them. But we've evolved in such a way with the current technology, with the current culture and everything that we live in, where white supremacy won't make the same mistake again. That's why they won't have social or musical leaders like we did in the 90s and in the 60s, because otherwise, like, with the amount of organization that they brought, whether whatever realm they're in, whether that's the political, social, or musical, then that's not allowed here to them. So I mean, a lot of that is based upon, like, money. Like, if white people can't get a cut of what you're selling, then you won't sell it. They'll find somebody to sell it for you.
Absolutely not. Like, hence, I'm so glad that you said that, Alexander. If white folks can't partner with you, if they can't benefit from it, then they're going to co-opt it. Hence the invasion of the white rapper. Hence Justin Timberlake. Hence Elvis Presley. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, it's just like an essay that I wrote. I mean, like, they love our culture, but they don't love us. So, I mean, I thought that was such a salient point, man. I mean, yeah, either way it goes, white America is going to try to take.
So let me ask then, do you gentlemen feel that hip hop has lost some of its social conscience?
Yeah.
Why?
So I think it's something really important that Alexander said. He said to the fact of black folks having fun and the government. See, it's like Dr. Francis Cress Welsing of the ISIS Papers once said, "Black people are very serious about not being serious." Right. So if you go back to the late '80s. You had so much hip hop that was very Afrocentric. You had clothing lines such as called like Cross Colors, Carl Kanai. I remember you had sweatshirts that that would say "Black by popular demand," or just clothing celebrating HBCUs, which are historical Black college and universities. I think that. I mean, like anything, everything sort of, like goes in phases. But I just think that the consciousness never got its second wave. I mean, sure, you had Lauryn Hill, you had Black Star, Immortal Technique, and one of my favorite MCs, Killer Mike. You had a lot of those guys talking political commentary, but it's the masses are listening to people like Boosie. You know what I'm saying? Nothing against Boosie Badass. Like
it sounds like Alexander has some comments about that, but you keep on going, LeRon.
I'm trying not to slam black folks today, but I mean, so I don't think that it ever got that wave, and due to where the money's going, it's just that, and considering that, over 80% of all hip hop is purchased by white people, I don't think that they're going to want to buy something that is preaching, Black self-respect, self-realization, talking about Marcus Garvey, talking about Malcolm X. We want to party, man. And we want to sip lean and have menage a trois. And so popularity and money always went out over a message. And so those hip hop artists have just sort of drowned that message out.
Before we go
not saying that there aren't acts doing it. I mean, Kendrick Lamar's "To Pimp a Butterfly" was a socially conscious album. You know what I mean? But it's like that. But again, as I said before, that's one artist. And of course, for every Kendrick Lamar, you have 5 Post Malones, right? Rockstar. I mean, it is what it is.
Just before we go a little bit further, there's a gentleman who I had on the Dr. Vibe show at Home of Epic Conversations a little while back, who has a book out called Blackout, and he actually has about 40 years in the black music industry. And wow. one of his most recent tweets said, and we're not talking, he said, this was on December 17th, Paul Porter sent on this tweet, white rappers are in. 8 out of the 10 top iTunes singles are by white artists. Coincidence?
No. Dr. Bob, let's think of it this way, right? 80% of all rap is bought by white people, right? Why buy something by a black person when you can buy something by someone that looks like you, that you can sort of relate to easier? I mean, look, I think Eminem's one of the greatest rappers to ever live. I mean, I don't think that can be disputed, but I think a large portion of his popularity is because he's white. So white people will gravitate towards somebody that looks like them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I think Alexander's back. I thought we lost him for a second. He is back with us now. Now, Alexander, you're going to have to move over a little bit because you're sort of right there is fine. Beautiful. Right there. Okay? So, yeah. So, Alexander, I want to flip it on to you. Do you feel that hip-hop has lost some of its social conscious?
Well, to piggyback off of what LeRon said again, I mean, I think it's kind of like, It's not necessarily that rap.
You're gonna move the other way.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
it's not that rap has necessarily lost its social consciousness. I think just the availability to access it has. It gets drowned out by so much of the popular stuff that gets put out by the radio stations and by, television, that it just becomes that much harder for people to seek out artists that actually tell them what's up. And so I think that as the availability, to their access dwindles, I think the public perception of that availability will dwindle as well. It's kind of like what people think, oh, well, there's not like really good writers anymore. There's not any more good books. It's like, yeah, there is. You just haven't heard them because either you're not putting the effort to, or people are directly not trying to make you find it. So when we think back to that statistic from that tweet that you said to us about how 8 of the 10 top iTunes singles are done by white rappers, it's the same thing, because like rap is such a black institution that white people have been trying their hardest, like all of their energy, to try to crack it. So that's why you got like they tried to Eminem got too accepted into the black community, so it wasn't going to work out for them. So that's when they try to use people like Macklemore and Iggy Azalea. I'm actually really surprised I remember her name. But they try to use these types of artists now, most recently Post Malone, because they kind of realize, okay, this is what's marketable right now, and this is what the kids are listening to, and this is how we can make a white artist reflect all of that. And the way that they co-opt it is then they give them legitimacy, because they're like, oh, well, Iggy Azalea has a black husband. So because they have a black husband, her issues or her views are then part of the black viewpoint, because she's so integrated, because she's so intimately integrated in that community. But the really thing that we have the big distinction of that right now is when we're being like lied to in terms of this access to the actual consciousness of hip hop, or when it's just our fault that we're not demanding a higher quality product from the people that we listen to. I mean, it's the same reason why I talk about the problem of hip-hop artists not doing enough in their communities. Like rappers need to be, I mean, I'm not, it's not my position to tell a person how they should live their lives or the type of person that they need to be, right? But if you're rapping about being the greatest person or about being the greatest rapper, you can't be the greatest rapper unless you're also a big community activist, because such a big part of rap is the stance and the work that you do in your community. So I think for me, it's kind of, I guess not easy, but what makes it a lot more tolerable to know that I live in this type of world where, a lot of these people are getting, the top 10 singles for iTunes, is that I feel comfortable because I still have access to the rappers that are still putting in that work, not just musically, but also artistically. So.
Okay. I've got one of the regulars of the Dr. Vibe show, Think TV. She's saying, I don't believe that white supremacy talking point that 80% of rap is bought by whites. This is another lie they will use to take over rap hip-hop, which is why 8 out of 10 top rappers are white. Does that make sense? You have to clarify that point. I'm not 100% clear on that point. But what I want both of you gentlemen to do then is, based on the conversation we've built up so far, where do you see the battle, or who's winning if there's a battle between white supremacy and hip-hop? Who's winning the war right now based on the social political climate in the United States at this present time?
I think it's white supremacy, right? Doesn't white supremacy win most of the time? It's kind of undefeated.
Okay, so well, that's true. That's an interesting quote. You don't mind if I tweet that out? That white supremacy is undefeated.
White supremacy on Father Time, man. They're undefeated. They take no L's.
So since a certain president has come into power in your country, because I'm in Canada, north of your country.
Justin Trudeau, man, what's up? Send him our way.
Yeah, and how do you feel has hip-hop addressed white supremacy since it's been quietly on the rise? Has it addressed it at all? Is it ignoring it? Or is it all about just making the dollars? and forget about the social political climate?
I'm going to go with the latter, to be honest with you. I mean, I just, here's the thing, right? I mean, it's sort of a symptom of a bigger problem, right? And a lot of black people feel like that when they have made money, when they can buy a big house next to a white person, when they have a car, when they got white folks buying their CDs, they're kind of above that, right? So they're saying, you know what, man, racism, it ain't really that real. All you gotta do is just grind hard. You know what I mean? You gotta what I say, if you don't grind, you don't shine. If you don't work, you don't eat. Like, I mean, something like, so basically it's sort of a warped version of the bootstrap theory, right? Where it's like, people who ain't doing well, that's because of their own choice. That's because of the fact that they're not working hard enough, right? So hip hop has become this thing where it's attaching itself to this capitalism, this phony meritocracy myth. Now, the three of us know that meritocracy is some bullshit, right? Excuse the language though, but I mean, come on, it's just not real. I think that black people in general feel like that once they've made it, they've sort of proven that, okay, well, maybe racism isn't as bad as it used to be, right? Philando Castile or Eric Garner or Tamir Rice getting killed, those are insulated incidents. Those don't represent, the full enormity of black life. And so why not celebrate your success? Why not call people who aren't grinding haters and lazy? So I mean, I think that the understanding of what racism is not there, and many black people don't have a full understanding of what racism, white supremacy is. So why would that not bleed into the music? Why would that not bleed into sports with Des Bryant of the Dallas Cowboys saying similar comments, or to what Charles Barkley has said? So I mean, if it's going to affect them, if it's going to affect black folks, the three of us know, then why would it not affect hip hop? So yeah.
Okay. Alexander?
Well, to kind of just go along that second point of where, you're kind of relating this into the current political climate of the United States, I think such a big part of why it's harder to seek out, kind of tying back to our earlier comments, the socially conscious hip-hop work is because of the pendulum swinging the other way. So with Obama, we had a more perceived liberal society because that's what the administration, and that's the key word, perceived, wanted to implement. But the United States only puts up with such a liberal president for so long until it has to go back the other way. And because it went so far with us actually electing the first mixed race president, it had to swing that much harder in the other direction. And so as a result of that, the social climate and political climate has reflected this. Now, to counteract that, we have the visibility of social media and the internet to kind of combat that. So as, things get labeled fake news and all of these things are going on because of the administration and its hands in the American political machine, we have tools like the internet and informative sites like Al Jazeera and others to actually give us content that we need to keep a level playing field. And the same thing goes for rap. We have the Migos and the Cardi B's and everything, but while all that's still happening, does anyone know that De La Soul put out an album last year? I did. I thought it was one of the best hip-hop albums of the year, but not a lot of people know that, So I think the kind of political climate that we are subjected to in America, where, I mean, Trump, he like, if he gave him a gun, he has a hairline trigger finger. Like, that guy, just bang, 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 bang. And so, and it kind of ties into why we don't see a lot of, like, black leadership, because of the incredible amount of effort that the white political machine goes into undermining its credibility and its value. And once that credibility goes out the window, then you don't have white people listening to you or even acknowledging you exist.
LeRon, did you want to add anything to that? You sound like...
No, man. Like, I think Alexander hit the nail right on the head. There's not really much that I can do with that.
So, gathering from what both you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, the white supremacy, though a lot of people may think it's an aggressive, it almost seems to be like a quiet little snake slithering through the grass when it comes to hip hop. Like, it's another area where, from what I gather from both you, they've always won the war, and the war, if they have a war with hip hop, they don't have to fight it aggressively. I'm looking for a word, I can't find it. Undercover. They're doing they're winning the war by being undercover because of a number of different reasons out there, whether accessibility, and also maybe part of it is that blacks don't support a lot of the conscious artists. Am I wrong there?
No. No. I'm sorry, Alexander, go on, please.
Well, no, so the best, I mean, just based upon that question that he asked, the best analogy that I can go to is, I'm not sure if you've seen it, it's a movie called Insidious. And the whole plot of the movie is that this kid gets trapped and terrorized by this creature that first comes to him as a visitor. And it makes him seem like, oh, I'm just like part of your dream, come this. And as the kid gets more and more fearless and more accepting of this monster, the monster finally reveals its true intentions to take over this kid and entrap him and enslave him. And a lot of the same thing has happened with hip-hop. Is that white people give us a leash, and it's like, yeah, okay, keep releasing this, keep releasing this, keep releasing this, until now we have white people trying to control hip-hop and control the narrative of what it actually stands for. And so that's what I kind of... So that analogy is kind of what I'm thinking the form has taken in terms of hip-hop's acceptance, as far as, like, okay, yeah, we allowed you to have your Biggies, your De La Souls and everything, but now all of that is gone because now we're inserting, the Iggy Azaleas and everything, and that's what's going to control the market. That's what people are going to attribute hip-hop to. And so that's, once you control the narrative and once you control the market, then you control people that access it.
Good point. LeRon?
Yeah. Something that Alexander said that was really important. This accessibility of different kind of music. It kind of reminds me of something that I heard. The late Elijah Muhammad said. He said, if you give people a choice between clean water and dirty water, they're going to pick the clean water, right? And so, expounding on what Alexander said, there's not really a lot of choices. I mean, I knew that De La Soul came out with an album last year. It has Snoop Dogg on it, so I mean, I'm a humongous Snoop Dogg. Something like, and I heard that it was real. I heard that it was real dope. But I mean, like, De La Soul, unfortunately, is great of a group, as great of a rap group. They're one of the greatest rap groups to ever do it. As great of a rap group as they are, they're not as appealing as, say, Amigos or you like, what's some of the other silly little groups? I mean, like Kodak Black, Lil Uzi Vert, So I mean, it's
that kid 21 Savage? He's a popular one, isn't he?
Fam, I've never heard him. I've heard about him. I've seen him. I'm like, no, but so I mean, like, going back to what you said though, I mean, it's all about the choice. So like, if we're not given a choice, like, the radio, there used to be this saying when I grew up, the radio plays the same 7 songs over and over and over, right? And so, like, I seriously doubt that people think Future is that good, right? I mean, he's like, I heard the song Mask Off and it was terrible, but for some reason the market has cultivated a taste that wants Future, so they play it over and over and over. And and I know that if you see something on a consistent basis, you're gonna be sort of attracted to it. You're gonna want it. It's not because you think that it's good, but it's just that you've just been conditioned to want it. So again, going back to Alexander's great point. It all comes back to choice, Dr. Bob. I mean, like, if we're fed a steady diet of action films, right, then we would not be able to see the great art like Boyhood or 13 Years a Slave. It's just, gosh, like, accessibility is such a big thing. Now, one point that I want to make, another thing, is that Alexander said that white supremacy wins hands down, and that's true. White supremacy controls the record labels, controls the way the music is released. Now, the playing field has been somewhat level because of the internet, but when it comes down to retail, when it comes down to concerts, I mean, it's, Post Malone is big because he has a big machine behind him, because this machine wants to push out a white rapper that the president's granddaughters or daughters look like. I mean, because again, like, man, like, it's I believe Sam Phillips, president of Sun Records, and if I'm getting the fellow's name wrong, please correct me, but he was looking at a black act, and I believe Sam Phillips signed Elvis Presley, and he once said something to the effect of, if I can bottle up what a black artist has, I'll make $1 million. And he somehow, he didn't do it. He just was a plain old culture vulture, and he got an artist who could sort of sing similar to black people, but could attract a white fan base, and that is Elvis Presley. So it's co-opting, and it's also the power behind getting to the masses.
From what we've discussed over the last little bit, it sounds that the hip hop doesn't have much of a chance because of a number of reasons, whether from economic to lack of consciousness. Where is there hope for hip hop to win the war here?
I think there's a way for hip hop to win the war when eventually white supremacy dies. Because the way I look at it is that white supremacy is like an empire, right? Empires, they have their golden ages. They have ages where a new challenge will represent itself and threaten that its dominance, and the empire either has to adapt and evolve with it or crumble at it. And what white supremacy has been really good at is meeting each challenge and evolving with it.
Absolutely.
But one thing that it can't evolve past is technology. And I think technology is the greatest threat to it because of the accessibility that it presents. That's why I think that the net neutrality trial is so much more important than people recognize, because it allows certain internet providers to deem what is acceptable in terms of content. And once you give a provider power of censorship, you give them power over accessibility. And so I think eventually, as the internet is able to become more accessible, and I'm not just talking about in metropolitan areas, I'm talking about in rural, I'm talking about like in this dirty South. Like, if you can be in the dirty South with a decent Wi-Fi connection, then white supremacy doesn't really stand a chance, because you have access to what that vast vault of the internet is. And so I think eventually hip hop will win, but I mean, it's gonna take a lot of rounds. You know what I'm saying? It's got a long road ahead of it, and I think really it also kind of depends upon if people are willing to do the work. You know, if people are still willing to take the time to seek out artists that continue to put out good content and not just get so wrapped up in pop music. Because if you really think about it, I don't know about y'all, but every time I turn on the radio, every song, like, it's not even lyrically or, you know, musically, it just, every song has like a pitch that's exactly the same. Like, if you really like take a listen to it, it's like, oh, they're just using these 4 scales over and over again, but they're just like switching up like the octave, so you think it's completely different, or they're just like using violins instead of like piano. And I think as people are able to recognize the repetitiveness and the lower quality of product that the commercialization is putting out to them, I mean, I think with the combination of technology, I think that might really strive people to kind of take a much more grassroots approach again.
Ron.
I think hip hop will win when there's more variety. You know, I think that going back to 87 to 94. I think, like, you had a Too Short alongside a BDP, alongside a Ghetto Boys, alongside a Poor Righteous Teachers, who sat next to an Ice Cube, who sat next to a Mobb Deep, who was also next to an Outkast, Snoop Dogg, Slick Rick, Rakim. You just had this sort of this spectrum of artists, and it wasn't just one thing. So I think that I have hope in, I don't know about the quality, because I think that for me, and this is totally off subject, but I just think that we're in this culture to where if you don't like something, you criticize it, you are a hater.
Yeah.
And so the standards are as low as the Roy Moore, Doug Jones election. I mean, it's just a low fucking bar, right? So I think that, but I mean, with all that being said, right, I think that the internet is the best thing to ever happen to hip hop from an exposure standpoint, because I mean, we have a lot of these young cats that are just making music, and a lot of it's not good, but some of it's just mind blowing, man. So I think that the genre walls are starting to blur. And once we get rid of the middleman, which is the record companies, because like record companies are just gonna fade out. I mean, if you look at it, like Universal owns so many record labels, right? Once they start to fade out, and once it is truly independent, then I can see hip hop getting back to an essence of just putting out songs, and I mean, like when everything wasn't so album driven, when it was just like LPs, you feel? And so I see a silver lining here, man. And if we're able to do away with the net neutrality laws, then I mean it's going to be sky's limit. I mean, the quality may never be there. I mean, we'll never see another Snoop Doggy Dogg. We'll never see another Slick Rick or another Lauryn Hill, maybe. But just the fact that we will be able to access artists who, in the vein of, say, an Immortal Technique, right? And at the same time listen to an artist similar to Chief Keef. So I have hope in the variety. Quality, I mean, that's debatable. That's a personal. That is an opinion, basically. But yeah, no, I think that once the record labels crumble, you guys, we're really gonna start seeing some really cool stuff happen, because then the gatekeepers will not be there.
I think, just to add on super quickly, I think also hip hop will survive because the ideals and the reason why is created will survive.
Absolutely.
So earlier in the beginning, Dr. Vibe, you asked us what hip-hop meant to us. How did it impact our lives? We laid out a very idealistic and emotional connection that we had. And I think that what will also, besides the practicality of, the methods that we laid out of how hip-hop will survive, hip-hop will survive because Black people will survive, the same that they always have. And as Black people continue to survive and, allow us to continue to participate in our own culture, then white supremacy can't stomp all of us out.
Nah, man. Bro, plus, man, like, hip-hop won't go the way of jazz, right? And it's because the Black experience is so intricately tied to hip-hop. Like, it's within its DNA. It's like you can't have one without the other. I mean, unless you listen to something like Atmosphere, which is just totally devoid of any Blackness. But that shit is trash. I'm sorry. keep it all like live with this garbage. But I mean, still though, like, it's, Alexander brilliantly put, hip hop's not going to die because Black folks won't die. Like, we're always the cutting edge, right? I mean, whenever something becomes super popular, like, kids don't say fleek no more, right? Because like, corporations grab this. So like, this ain't cool no more. We on to the next one. So we're always going to be creative, and hip hop is always going to be the voice of the ghetto. And unless the ghetto just is done, unless Black folks are just all economically well, then hip hop will forever survive.
Okay. Well, before we let both of you go, and it's been an epic conversation, I want you both to give a message to the hip-hop family. Give them some marching orders or best practices in order to combat white supremacy. So first, I'll let Alexander speak first. What are your marching orders, thoughts to the hip-hop community in regards to dealing with white supremacy, getting the message out and making it effective, not only to the hip-hop community, but the larger African-American community?
I mean, I think we just need to encourage and follow in the examples of, people like Kendrick Lamar, Childish Gambino, and Beyonce, not just because of the musical work that they do, but of how they transcend just being an artist. So to tie into an example of Childish Gambino, he's entrenched himself in so much of white culture that now they can't deny him. He's becoming Simba in the live-action movie of The Lion King. He had the creators of Spider-Man create a version of Spider-Man that looked exactly like him and that he voiced. So he's literally a Black Spider-Man. And if you think about the role that comic books have in mainstream white culture, then you can realize how amazing that is for him to demand a major comic book company to do that for him. And I think for us to really support these types of artists and to support the type of community work that their work demands, then I think we'll continue heading in the right direction. It's about, as much as it is, we place a responsibility on the artists creating the content, we have to take ownership of the responsibility as consumers and demand a higher quality of product for people to create. And as we navigate those waters, then and each party holds itself accountable, then we'll get a lot more of the results that we're seeking.
LeRon?
Man, fantastic, Alexander. I loved how you said that we need to demand a higher quality product. I think that being critical about something means that you love it, and as I said before, you have people saying, oh, if you don't like something, you're a hater. And if we don't start calling it out for what it is, then this doesn't allow people to get better. Then it just allows this low bar of music to come out. At the same time, look, I'm 39 years old, right? So obviously I should not be listening to Playboy Cardi. He's not trying to appeal to my demographic. I get it, but we can't use the age as an excuse because, man, look, Rakim was young when he did Follow the Leader and Eric B. as president. Ice Cube was young when he wrote F the Police. So, you know, that argument is garbage. With that being said, I would just tell all the hip hop artists and producers to continue to create from the heart and tell the truth. You know, the great Pimp C said, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he was like, when we talked about the dope game, we talked about the ups and downs of it. So they wanted to paint, and I'm speaking of UGK, they wanted to paint a picture of what real life was. And I just want hip hop artists to get back to what real life, get back to what real life is, what real black life is. You know, because it's not balling out of control. I don't know any black millionaires. I mean, they're not unicorns because I mean, you know, they're out there, right? Obviously, but they're not as common as you would believe if you listen to a Rick Ross song. So I just want us to be honest, be truthful to ourselves, and don't be afraid to step outside the box. You know, that's what makes someone like Kendrick Lamar great. You know, that's one of the reasons why Childish Gambino got nominated for album of the year. The one joint he has, the slow song that he's singing.
Redbone.
Yeah, incredible record, right? Stepping outside the box, and also pay homage to what came before you. Mm-hmm. You know, as a writer, so I'm gonna start on my first novel next year, right? And I told myself before I do that, I'm going to read everything that James Joyce wrote because I think he's just the best. You know what I mean? I'm going to reread 100 Years in Solitude. You know what I mean? I'm going to, you know, read just, I'm just going to reach back into all the great stuff because I want to be great. And I was listening to Kendrick Lamar's Damn album with a friend of mine, and he said, you know, what makes Kendrick great is he's a student of the game. And, you know, taking it to basketball terms, I mean, dude, like Kyrie Irving is an incredible.
Oh, you had to go to the Celtics. You had to go there.
But I mean, like you know, he's incredible because he is a student of the game, and his favorite player. I mean, you can't say too much about Kobe. So just innovate, be truthful, and be a student.
Well, there you go. You rolled your Celtics, and as we were broadcasting this live tonight, Kobe's number 8 and number 24 being retired tonight. So you rolled it all in one shot. Very good. So, gentlemen, if I understand correctly, as we close out here, you're saying the artists that get there, respect the pass, don't sell out, and for the consumers to buy good stuff but support good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. That is it. I knew it was going to be epic. The left coast gentlemen hit it out of the park. They were out of bounds as always.
Always the west coast, man.
Yeah, left coast, man. Left coast.
West coast, best coast.
There you go. Well, thanks to both of you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedules to make this an epic conversation. Before we let both of you leave, can you possibly share your contact information, Alexander? Actually, Alexander, you had a dissertation. Is it long?
No, I'm still in the process of writing it. I just wrote the abstract. So, I mean, I got 200 pages I need to write. I'm on page 5.
Okay. All right. So, well, definitely when that 200 pages done, if you're comfortable, we'd love to hear some highlights from it and to share with us. We'd really appreciate that if you're comfortable with that.
That'd be fantastic, man.
Always.
All right. Give your contact information, sir.
Tweet at me, Dan the Malformed. Check out my HuffPost blog. Just type in Alexander Williams, Huffington Post blog. I'm going to be releasing a new one this month, so keep an eye out for that. And just let me know what you think.
Excellent. LeRon Barton.
Yes, you can find me at www.leronbarton.com. I'm also on Twitter at Mainline LeRon. I have an Instagram, LeRon L. Barton. And gosh, you know, I'm a pretty much regular on Dr. Vibe. I'm always looking for a great conversation. If you liked or disliked what I said, please contact me. Just leave the nastygram stuff out.
Yeah, I love how you slide that in. That is good stuff.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, it's Dr. Vibe here. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Also, I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. If you want to watch replays of conversations like this on YouTube, just go to the YouTube, put in the search engine, the space DR period space VIBE space SHOW. If you want to hear audio replays of my epic conversations, go to the DR VIBE SHOW.com. You can also go to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music Store. You can also hear selected replays at thegoodmenproject.com, which I contribute to, and also LeRon does. Maybe one day Alexander will too. And also at
that plug.
All right. And,
I got you.
And WJMS Radio out of New York. Also, know that, again, I'm a certified empowerment coach. If you'd like a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session, please contact me at DRVIBESHOW on Twitter. Email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Or you can go to my website, click on the Contact Dr. Vibe Show. We can make it happen. Also, I'm the brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. That's Cuisine Noir magazine. Go to it at cuisinenoirmag.com. Also, I provide a service called Getting Media Coverage, where I promote entrepreneurs, businesses, in regards to getting media promotion so you can enhance your business or elevate your business. So, that is it. I'd like to say thanks again to both gentlemen for taking time out of their positive, productive schedule. And they had never met before, and you think they've known each other forever, but they don't live that far away from each other, which is interesting. I also want to thank...
now.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Dr. Tati, thank you. And also Think TV, thank you for watching live. Thank you, everyone, for watching on the replay also. So, 3 last things. Remember, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Also, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith. There are still more epic conversations to come on the Dr. Vibe 4 show before 2017 ends. So stay tuned and walk good. God bless. Thanks for watching. Good night.